Hi, I'm Jim Franks, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. Our verse for today is Romans 10, verse 4. Now, before we look at this verse, I want to give some background on why it matters. For several years in the 1980s, I attended a conference sponsored by Biblical Archaeology Review, a magazine focused on biblical archaeology. The conference was always held the week before Thanksgiving, beginning on a Thursday and running through Sunday. Each year it featured some of the foremost Bible scholars and archaeologists. Because I subscribed to the magazine, I received an invitation every year, and each year the conference was held in a different city. In the late 1980s, the conference was scheduled for Boston, Massachusetts. I had served as a pastor in Boston until my transfer in 1987. And shortly after moving to Houston, I decided to attend the conference there in Boston. I was interested in several of the presentations, but one in particular caught my attention. It was given by an instructor in New Testament theology from Boston College. Although Boston College is a Catholic school, its theology department at that time was mostly conservative. His topic was titled, "Did Paul Do Away with the Law?" I was a little surprised by the directness of the subject, but given the conservative nature of the faculty back then, perhaps I shouldn't have been. His position was that Paul did not do away with the law. He even gave a brief history of the idea that Paul abolished the Ten Commandments in his writings, which was prevalent at the time. The book of Romans was his primary evidence that Paul supported the law rather than abolishing it. Romans includes verses such as Romans 7, verse 12, where Paul declares the law to be holy. The verse reads, "Therefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy and just and good." Now that hardly sounds like Paul is dismissing the law. Another verse he discussed was our verse for today, Romans 10, verse 4. At first glance, this verse appears to say that the law ended with Christ. But is that really what Paul meant? We know from the writings of John that obedience to God's commandments remains an expectation for Christians. John says that if we say we know God, we are liars if we do not keep His commandments. So what makes Romans 10, verse 4 both unique and challenging? Well, let's read it now. "For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes." The English word end sounds final, like conclusion or termination, but the Greek behind the word tells a different story. The Jamieson, Fawcett, and Brown commentary notes that Christ is the object or aim of the law. That's a very different sense than simply end. The Greek word translated end here is telos, which means goal or purpose. Robertson's Word Pictures of the New Testament likewise explains that telos means Christ is the goal or aim of the law. We can confirm this by looking at other uses of telos. For example, 1 Peter 1 verse 9 says, "Receiving the end," Greek word telos, "of your faith, the salvation of your souls." Now, no one will argue that Peter is saying faith has ended. Rather, he is describing the goal or outcome of faith, the salvation of our souls. Putting all this together, Romans 10 verse 4 becomes much clearer. Paul is not declaring the law abolished. He is declaring that Christ is the law's goal, its intended purpose, pointing us toward true righteousness.
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.